Shalom to my brothers and sisters walking in this truth. I am YAH'S fire. We are Bani, Akal, Esh, children of the consuming fire. I want to talk to my brothers and sisters today about a newly or clearly revealed friction between the northern and the southern kingdoms of Israel. The Most High says in Jeremiah 50:33, "Thus saith the Lord, the children of Israel and the children of Judah are oppressed together." Now, I want to bring this topic to everybody's attention because there seems to be a little problem going on in the newly revised and newly awakened Israel, where you have northern tribes talking down about being associated or being being connected to the southern tribe. Here's the problem. The Most High says you are connected. We are connected. Northern and southern kingdoms. The northern tribe are the Native American Indians, the Hispanics, the Tainos, the Arawak, all of these aboriginal tribes that are scattered abroad and over the globe throughout a lot of the Caribbean islands are where the northern tribe descended from. But a lot of them feel like they're better than the Black Americans or the darker tribes. Well, I'm here to tell you and inform you, you're not. And there's a beef going on. But this beef has been a biblical beef. And we're going to take you to the biblical beef and where it actually started. Let's go to 1 Kings chapter 12, verse 1. And it reads, "And Rehoboam went to Shechem, for all Israel were come to Shechem to make him king. And it came to pass when Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, was yet in Egypt, heard of it, for he was fled from the presence of King Solomon, and Jeroboam dwelt in Egypt." This Jeroboam was to be named king of Israel after the death of Solomon, when Solomon had went off the rails and started breaking the commandments of the Most High and dealing with strange women. The Most High promised this Jeroboam, who was a servant of Solomon, that he would get 10 of the tribes of Israel. Okay, and the other tribes would be left for David. So Solomon hears of this and he wants to kill Jeroboam. Somebody he named gave a great position in his kingdom. Solomon gave this man a great position in his kingdom. But once he found out that the Most High was now going to strip the kingdom away from Solomon, he decided he wanted to take action and go after this Jeroboam. Okay, so now let's go back to the story in verse 3. "That they sent and called him and Jeroboam, and all the congregation of Israel came and spake unto Rehoboam, saying, Thy father made our yoke grievous. Now therefore make thou the grievous service of thy father, and his heavy yoke which he put upon us lighter, and we will serve thee." Now this Rehoboam, almost similar name, this Rehoboam is Solomon's son. Solomon, he takes over the kingdom, or is given the kingdom, or they're ready to make him the full king instead of being a partial king. But all you got to do, man, is lighten up on the work. Your father worked us to death. We don't want that anymore. So kind of lighten up on the work for us, right? Verse 5, "And he said unto them, Depart yet for 3 days, then come again to me. And the people departed. And King Rehoboam consulted with the old men that stood before Solomon, his father, while he yet lived, and said, How do ye advise that I may answer this people? And they spake unto him, saying, If thou wilt be a servant unto this people this day, and will serve them, and answer them, and speak good words to them, then they will be thy servants forever. But he forsook the counsel of the old men, which they had given him, and consulted with the young men that were grown up with him, and which stood before him. So Rehoboam ignored the counsel of his elders. He ignored the counsel of the people who had come up with Solomon's advisors. Now, why would you do that, knowing that they know probably way better than you do, being that you're a young new king, how to, conduct business and and be a good ruler, because Solomon was that. When Solomon was in power, Israel enjoyed safety. They had no enemies. The world feared them. The world admired Israel because of Solomon's blessings that came from the Most High. So his guys, his advisors, are now advising his son. But his son, just like today, just like you have today, where the young guys don't want to hear from the older generation. They won't take advice. They won't take heed. So he's going to go to his own guys, his crew, his homeboys, his friends, and see what they say, right? Verse 9, And he said unto them, What counsel give ye, that we may answer this people, who have spoken to me, saying, Make the yoke which thy father did put upon us lighter. And the young men that were grown up with him spake unto him, saying, Thus shalt thou speak unto this people that spake unto thee, saying, Thy father made our yoke heavy, but make thou it lighter unto us? Thus shalt thou say unto them, My little finger shall be thicker than my father's loins. And now, whereas my father did lay you with a heavy yoke, I will add to your yoke. My father has chastised you with whips, but I will chastise you with scorpions. He's basically telling them, I'm going to make your work even harder than my father made for you. I'm going to be an even harsher, tougher, crueler king. I'm going to chastise you with scorpions instead of whips. So verse 12. So Jeroboam and the people came to Rehoboam the third day, as the king had appointed, saying, Come to me again the third day. And the king answered the people roughly, forsook the old men's counsel that they gave him, and spake to them after the counsel of the young men, saying, My father made your yoke heavy, and I will add to your yoke. My father also chastised you with whips, but I will chastise you with scorpions. Wherefore the king hearkened not unto the people, for the cause was from the Lord, that he might perform his saying, which the Lord spake by Ahijah the Shilonite unto Jeroboam the son of Nebat. So when all Israel saw the king hearken not unto them, the people answered the king, saying, What portion have we in David? Neither have we inheritance in the son of Jesse. To your tents, O Israel. Now see to thine own house, David. So Israel departed unto their tents. So the whole nation of Israel, the northern and some of the southern, said, you know what? We're not going to back you. We're not staying. You want us to work hard? You're going to work us hard? Well, we're leaving. There's the split between the northern and the southern kingdom. Starts right there, right? Now let's go on. Verse 17. But as for the children of Israel, which dwelt in the cities of Judah, Rehoboam reigned over them. Then King Rehoboam sent Adoram, who was over the tribute, and all Israel stoned him with stones, that he died. Therefore King Rehoboam made speed to get him up to his chariot to flee Jerusalem. So Israel rebelled against the house of David unto this day. So they killed Solomon's son, the king Rehoboam's man, who was collecting tribute. They killed him. They stoned him. So Rehoboam now wants to get out of Jerusalem because he's afraid for his life. They're not trying to deal with him. They don't want to hear from him anymore, right? So, verse 20, and it came to pass when all Israel heard that Jeroboam was come again, that they sent and called him unto the congregation and made him king over all Israel. There was none that followed the house of David, but the tribe of Judah only. So, Jeroboam, Solomon's servant, is now made king over all Israel. None of the tribes wanted to follow Solomon's son, Rehoboam, right? Verse 21, and when Rehoboam was come to Jerusalem, he assembled all the house of Judah with the tribe of Benjamin and 180,000 chosen men, which were warriors to fight against the house of Israel, to bring the kingdom again to Rehoboam, the son of Solomon. So Rehoboam gathered 160,000 men to go to war against his own people, okay, against his own nation. He was going to go to war, going to fight, right? Verse 22, but the word of God came unto Shemaiah, the man of God, saying, speak unto Rehoboam, the son of Solomon, king of Judah, and unto all the house of Judah and Benjamin, and to the remnant of the people, saying, thus saith the Lord, ye shall not go up, nor fight against your brethren, the children of Israel. Return every man to his house, for this thing is from me. Well, the Most High is saying, you're not going to go to war against your own brothers. This thing that's happening, where there's a split between the nations, comes from me. This thing that's happening where they don't want to follow you and they don't want you to be their king, they want Jeroboam to be the king, comes from me, because the Most High had promised Jeroboam that he would be king, right? Let's move on. In the same verse, 24, they hearkened therefore to the word of the Lord and returned to depart according to the word of the Lord. Then Jeroboam built Shechem in Mount Ephraim and dwelt therein, and went out from thence and built Penuel. But we're going to stop right there because that's what I wanted to get to. The beef and the separation came from the Most High, the northern tribes, right? But the northern tribe starts to take on this attitude that they're better than the black Americans here, especially in this country. We see it a lot. I'm not too sure abroad, but we're seeing things like that on YouTube where there's racism in all these other Caribbean countries and Mexico and Dominican Republic, you know, especially the thing with the Haitians and Dominican Republic is beyond belief how they could hate each other and live on the same island. But I want to take you to a book. This book is called, and I would tell everybody to pick this book up. It's called The Trail of Tears, The Rise and Fall of the Cherokee Nation, okay, by John Ehle, E-H-L-E. We're going to get into this book to show and prove some things, all right, because that's what we like to do over here, all right? We're going to show and prove some things about both tribes, because the Most High said in the book of Jeremiah, chapter 50 and 33, chapter 50 and 33, the book of Jeremiah, thus saith the Lord, the children of Israel and the children of Judah are oppressed together. Now that oppression, of course, happened also, began in biblical times where the nation of Israel was in captivity to all the nations around the world, and it continued up into the late or mid 1800s, right? But let's see what we're talking about. I'm going to open this book, Trail of Tears, to chapter 18, page 287. And try to put this up on the screen so we can follow along, so we can read. It's tough because a lot of the words are very small. Page 287, chapter 15, Trail of Tears, the book, The Trail of Tears. Their dress was neat and picturesque. All wore turbans except 4 or 5 with hats, many of them tunics with sashes, many long robes, and nearly all some drapery, so that they had the oriental air of the old scripture pictures of patriarchal processions. This is talking about the Cherokees, their dress code, what they were wearing at the time that their oppressors came on the scene and met them. They were dressed in attire from the Bible. It says they wore turbans, which we know is a dress code for the priest, tunics with sashes, long robes, so much that they looked like the people of the scriptures, is what this book is saying. But let's move on. Okay, page 323 of this book. Page 323. And it's chapter 20. Right? Chapter 20. I'll start at 322. Some had gone by riverboat, others by land, and there had been suffering, fatigue, and illness, and even death. Over the years, the roads to the west had been made and worn by many feet, white, red, and black, booted moccasins and bare. The roads were burial grounds, particularly preying on the weak, the very old, and infants. The fleet could carry more than 1,000 Cherokees and blacks returning for others, so that the entire tribe could be moved in this way by winter. Now, at this point, they are moving the Cherokees and the blacks off of their lands in Georgia. Georgia was pristine land. They had minerals there. And these oppressors came to take this land from these Black Americans and these Native Americans, so-called, right? Page 323. 2 infants who were ill at the start died. One was Cherokee, the other black. I'm going to keep referencing to these types of things in this book to show the oppression of our people together. Okay? We're going to move on to page 334. 334. I read this book, in its entirety, and I've marked out a lot of the verses or lines that I wanted to highlight and go back to. So this is what I'm doing. Page 334. The Indians were a step higher on the ladder than the blacks. Which of these blacks are to go to the west? Which to the auction block? These are not worth the trip or are so independent they'd try to run off. Break up the black families as needs be. Choose for travel the best ones, the strongest, and sell the others. But you see where it says the Indians were a step higher on the ladder than the blacks. They taught these Indians that, these so-called Indians, who are the northern tribe, they taught them that. And a lot of that thinking or ideology has been passed down through the years. And this is why some of you northern tribe, think you are better than your darker brother and sister, because the oppressors came on the scene and told you that you were better and started making all of these distinctions, destroying your culture and your way of life, and at the same time, your mental and your physical. And sidebar, there's a video of a Mexican on YouTube talking about how he doesn't want to sign a record deal with blacks. He's a rapper. He doesn't want to sign a record deal with blacks. He wants to sign a record deal with his people because he's trying to do it for his people and he loves his people. I don't want to sign with black. Well, my man, if you don't want to sign with black people under the music that black people created, then don't do black music. Don't subscribe to anything that you consider black. Don't subscribe to our way of, our culture. I mean, you're the one making the distinction. Because I know, living in New York, growing up in New York, blacks and Puerto Ricans, we didn't really see a distinction. That hip hop music that you want to do, that came from blacks and Puerto Ricans. Or the hip hop, or the spinning, or the break dancing, the pop locking, the tagging up, and the graffiti. Go back and look, and go back to the beginning. But see, this is another thing where he doesn't want to reverence his elders, just like Solomon's son. I mean, the nerve and the hypocrisy for you to say you don't want to sign to a black label. Meanwhile, you want to do black music. You sound crazy. And then this same guy said that in jail, he sides with what he called the Wood. Yo, the Wood get busy. Y'all got to find that on YouTube. He sounds crazy and he's talking crazy. But he sides with the Wood. In other words, the Pecker Woods. In other words, the European, the oppressor, the white guys. He sides with them in prison. A lot of Northern tribe does that. And this is why we have the beef. But you need to understand something. Our oppressors are the same. Your people were oppressed, or your tribe was oppressed by the same oppressor. And they were oppressing the Northern and the Southern at the same time. Now let's move on. Page 338 in the Cherokee book. Okay? Let me start at page 339 to get a context. Above Waterloo, he loaded his Indians and blacks aboard a double-decker keel boat pulled by the steamer Vesper. The Indians hung over, still bitter, refused to answer roll call, so he was not certain that the count 489 was correct. Loaded onto a ship, Indians and blacks together. Why? Because the Most High says in Jeremiah 50 and 33, Israel and Judah are oppressed together. This is why you see black and Indians being oppressed at the same time. Let's move on to page 353 of this book. It's a great book. I encourage y'all to pick it up and read through it. Gives great information, a lot of information, and dispels a lot of this myth about Indians not being Hebrews, because they were tortured just as well as the Black Americans, the South American, the Jamaican, here in America, the Native Americans, the so-called, and the Black Americans, who are Indians, were tortured together. You had your land stripped away from you. You had your children stripped away from you. You had food, all kind of your human rights stripped away from you. Together, we got to put an end to this. Like there's a separation, and anybody siding with their oppressor, anybody making an allegiance to their oppressor, you are going to get judgment for that. A lot of people claim they love God and they love Jesus, man. I see it. Really? But then have this prejudice. Especially the prejudices, especially toward the tribe of Judah. Because everybody thinks they better than the tribe of Judah. Meanwhile, look at culture. So that's all I'm going to say. Look at the culture. Look at all that is brought around the world. Look at who everybody copies around the world. We don't copy nobody else. We don't copy anybody. We here in America do our own thing. And it goes from here around the world. But let's continue. Page 353. All right. Matter of fact, let me start at 352. Short verse. The Cherokees and blacks, unguarded, journeyed to McMinnville and thence to Nashville. After crossing the river, there they went to Hopkinsville, Kentucky, and crossed the Ohio River at Golconda, proceeding through southern Illinois to Greens Ferry on the Mississippi. They traveled together. They ran together. They were helping each other because they were being oppressed by the same oppressor. Page 353. There was scarce room in the wagon for the weary and the ill. Once the sickness fell, walking day after day was torture for the elderly, and the babies were weakened by the trip too. The main enemy was not exertion, but disease, which chose the weaker Indians and blacks and humbled them. Dysentery, diarrhea, head and chest colds were common. It was rare for any of the travelers not to have intestinal cramps and other pains, and the diet provided by Lewis Ross, admittedly typical travelers' fare, was cheap and lacking in variety of nutrition. The food was bad, it was terrible, and it couldn't sustain them. Didn't help them even when they ate it. I'm going to jump down. Rarely was any shelter provided except that the sick might be congregated in a church or school, placed on pallets on the floors in rows, little children on one side, the elderly on the other, Indian and black together. Shamans chanting with a single white doctor making inspections, crouching beside each patient, asking a few questions in English, struggling to understand the Cherokee or African or English replies, doing a little for each person. Even the doctors, they didn't really do much. They didn't help. Okay? Page 354. No rain. The drought lingered until September 23rd, and then only a light shower occurred. On September 28th, at last, the Indians and blacks could turn their faces upward into the pelting, refreshing drops, drench themselves with water's deliciousness, let it saturate their hair and clothing. So, even while they're walking, because this is the Trail of Tears, they're walking from Georgia to Oklahoma, the Trail of Tears. It was very little rain and very little water for them on this walk. 355. Always there were Indians and blacks alongside white settlers waiting at every ferry. Jump down. Suppliers weren't at the drop yesterday to meet us. Supply merchant says we were due week before last. 12 to 13,000 Indians and blacks. Let me start there again. 645 wagons on the trail now. 5,000 horses. 12 to 13,000 Indians and blacks. See this mournful procession. Why? Because the Most High said in the book of Jeremiah 50 and 33, Israel and Judah are oppressed together. All right? Let's go to page 357. The second second paragraph. But the march must continue. There are no days to attend the graves. Bushy Head says, we move out tomorrow morning. Think of that. All these corpses with their souls still inside are being left for the robbery of the witches. Fourth paragraph. Mud and manure, salt, meat, and slush, coughing your lungs out, wrapped in a blanket, lying on the wet ground, sun-baked and snowed on. Raindrops in your eyes like tears. Tears in your eyes. The Indians and blacks go west. That's right. Page 358. Many of the aged Indians were suffering extremely from the fatigue of the journey and the ill health consequent upon it. Several were then quite ill, and an aged man, we were informed, was then in the last struggles of death. Jump down to the second paragraph. A great many ride on horseback and multitudes go on foot, even aged females, apparently nearly ready to drop into the grave, were traveling with heavy burdens attached to the back on the sometimes frozen ground and sometimes muddy street, with no covering for the feet except what nature had given them. We learned from the inhabitants on the road where the Indians passed that they buried 14 or 15 at every stopping place, and they make a journey of 10 miles per day only on an average. So they walked 10 miles a day, nothing on their feet, in the snow, in the mud, or hard frozen ground, from Georgia to Oklahoma, and it is called the Trail of Tears. And we're starting to see why it's called the Trail of Tears. We're going to drop down, same page, 358. Long time we travel on way to new land. People feel bad when they leave old nation. Women's cry and maids sad wails. Children cry and many men cry. And all look sad like when friends die. But they say nothing and just put heads down and keep on, go towards west. Many days pass and people die very much. The Trail of Tears, right? 359, page 359, second paragraph. The shaman chants to the river. The shaman chants to the river, the sun and the fire. The black witch doctor chants in a whisper to his hands. The Christians chant to Jesus and the Holy Ghost. The ill move into the cold wind and water. Jump down. The Christians sing. The doctor's curses, turns to shrugs, crouches beside an old chief who has too little strength to go to any of the priests, even though there are several holding services nearby. The voices of the blacks cleanse the morning. Jump all the way down to the bottom of the page. The shaman tells the mother not to feed the baby for 7 days. Instead, let him drink a concoction of herbs. Oh, go on your way, he is told. She is not Cherokee, she says. Christian, the woman tells him. Feed your baby, black woman, the white doctor tells her. You have milk enough. Black women make milk from corn and fatback. A miracle, a nigger miracle. What will you name your baby? The doctor asks a black woman. She says, Ezekiel. Why? Because these people know who they are and where they come from. But now they suffer the curses for going away from the laws of the Most High. Right? Last chapter on this page, which is 360. She won't be able to carry her new baby, he says. She ought to be put in a wagon. Yes, even if she is an African. That's right, because if she's an African, she has to walk. Can't be in the wagon. Page 361. Dr. Eliezer Butler, the American Board medical missionary, had been with the Indians and blacks in the stockades and camps and was serving on this trail too. He wondered why, God knows, even the storms, the elements conspired to afflict this people. From the 1st of June, I felt I have been in the midst of death, he wrote. He estimated that 1/5 of the Cherokees had died, and of the blacks, how many of these dead were black? Nobody troubled to guess. They didn't care. They didn't care about the blacks because these oppressors considered the other tribe better. You know, they considered them better. And this is written in a lot of books where they chose the Native American over this quote unquote African, especially the women. Especially the women. But let's jump down to, well, you know what? We're going to stop there. I'm going to stop with the Trail of Tears book, but I just wanted to share some of that and give you a perspective and maybe get your mind stayed out of being this, having this thing about, no, they're not Hebrews, or no, we're better than this tribe, or no, I don't want to be a part of black culture. Meanwhile, you're doing black culture. The Most High says, Israel and Judah are oppressed together. That's from biblical time up to the present time. And I just needed to share that with y'all. If you like this video, hit the subscribe button and share this video and let us, grow in this walk. And with that, I want to say shalom to my brothers and sisters, and we give all praise, all honor, all glory and power to the Most High Yah. We thank him for his Holy Spirit, and we thank him for Yeshua, our general and our king to come.